What's up, guys? Welcome to June 8th as we dive into Ecclesiastes chapter 11, verse 7, where it talks about advice for old and young. Light is sweet. How pleasant to see a new day dawning. When people live to be very old, let them rejoice in every day of life. Let them also remember there will be many dark days. Everything still to come is meaningless. Young people, it's wonderful to be young. Enjoy every minute of it. Do everything you want to do. Take it all in, but remember that you must give in an account to God for everything you do. So refuse to worry and keep your body healthy, but remember that youth with a whole life before you is meaningless. Don't let the excitement of youth cause you to forget your Creator. Honor Him in your youth before you grow old and say life is not pleasant anymore. Remember Him before the light of the sun, moon, and stars is dim to your old eyes, and rain clouds continually darken your sky. Remember Him before your legs, the guards of your whole house, start to tremble, and remember your shoulders, the strong men stoop. Remember Him before your teeth, your few remaining servants. Stop grinding, and before your eyes, the woman looking through the windows, see dimly. Remember Him before the door to life's opportunity is closed, and the sound of work fades. Now you rise at the first chirping of the birds, but then all their sounds will grow faint. Remember Him before you become fearful of falling and worrying about danger in the streets, before your hair turns white like an almond tree in bloom, and you drag along without energy like a dying grasshopper and a copperberry, to no longer inspire sexual desire. Remember Him before you near the grave, your everlasting home, when the mourners will weep at your funeral. Yes, remember your Creator now while you are young, before the silver cord of life snaps and the golden bowl is broken. Don't wait until the water jar is smashed at the spring and the pulley is broken at the well, for then the dust will return to the earth, and the spirit will return to God who gave it. Everything is meaningless, says the teacher, completely meaningless. Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 9. Concluding thoughts. Keep this in mind. The teacher was considered wise, and he taught the people everything he knew. He listened carefully to many proverbs, studying and classifying them. The teacher sought to find just the right words to express truths clearly. The words of the wise are like cattle prods, painful but helpful. Their collected sayings are like a nail-studded stick with which a shepherd drives the sheep. Yes, my child, let me give you some further advice. Be careful, for writing books is endless, and many study wears you out. That's a whole story. Here now is my final conclusion. Fear God and obey His commands, for this is everyone's duty. God will judge us for everything we do, including every secret, whether good or bad. 1 Kings chapter 12. The northern tribes revolt. Rehoboam went to Shechem, where all Israel had gathered to make him king. When Jeroboam, son of Nebat, heard of this, he returned from Egypt, for he had fled to Egypt to escape from King Solomon. The leaders of Israel summoned him, and Jeroboam and the whole assembly of Israel went to speak with Rehoboam. Your father was a hard master, they said. Lighten the harsh labor demands and heavy taxes that your father imposed on us. Then we will be your loyal subjects. Rehoboam replied, Give me 3 days to think this over, then come back from my answer. So the people went away. Then King Rehoboam discussed the matter with the older men who had counseled his father Solomon. What is your advice? He asked. How should I answer these people? The older counselors replied, "If you are willing to be a servant to these people today and give them a favorable answer, they will always be your loyal subjects." But Rehoboam rejected the advice of the older men and instead asked the opinion of the young men who had grown up with him and were now his advisors. "What is your advice?" he asked them. "How should I answer these people who want me to lighten the burdens imposed by my father?" The younger man replied, "This is what you should tell those complainers who want a lighter burden. My little finger is thicker than my father's waist. Yes, my father lay heavy burdens on you, but I'm going to make them even heavier. My father beat you with whips, but I will beat you with scorpions." 3 days later, Jeroboam and all the people returned to hear Rehoboam's decision, just as the king had ordered. But Rehoboam spoke harshly to the people, for he rejected the advice of the older counselors and followed the counsel of his younger advisors. He told the people, "My father laid heavy burdens on you, but I'm going to make them even heavier. My father beat you with whips, but I will beat you with scorpions." So the king paid no attention to the people. This turn of events was the will of the Lord, for it fulfilled the Lord's message to Jeroboam, son of Nebat, through the prophet Ahijah from Shiloh. When all Israel realized that the king had refused to listen to them, they responded, "Down with the dynasty of David. We have no interest in the son of Jesse. Bring back to your homes, O Israel. Look out for your own house, O David." So the people of Israel returned home, but Rehoboam continued to rule over the Israelites who lived in the towns of Judah. King Rehoboam sent Adoniram, who was in charge of forced labor, to restore order, but the people of Israel stoned him to death. When this news reached King Rehoboam, he quickly jumped into his chariot and fled to Jerusalem. And to this day, the northern tribes of Israel had refused to be ruled by a descendant of David. When the people of Israel learned of Jeroboam's return from Israel, they called an assembly and made him king over all Israel. So only the tribe of Judah remained loyal to the family of David. 2 Chronicles chapter 10. Rehoboam went to Shechem, where all Israel had gathered to make him king. When Jeroboam, son of Nebat, heard of this, he returned from Egypt, for he had fled to Egypt to escape from King Solomon. The leaders of Israel summoned him, and Jeroboam and all Israel went to speak with Rehoboam. "Your father was a hard master," they said. "Lighten the harsh labor demands and heavy taxes that your father imposed on us. Then we will be your loyal subjects." Rehoboam replied, "Come back in 3 days for my answer." So the people went away. Then King Rehoboam discussed the matter with the older men who had counseled his father Solomon. "What is your advice?" he asked. "How should I answer these people?" The older counselors replied, If you are good to these people and do your best to please them and give them a favorable answer, they will always be your loyal subjects." But Rehoboam rejected the advice of the older men and instead asked the opinion of the young men who had grown up with him and were now advisors. "What is your advice?" he asked them. "How should I answer these people who want me to lighten the burdens imposed by my father?" The younger men replied, "This is what you should tell those complainers who want a lighter burden. My little finger is thicker than my father's waist. Yes, my father lay heavy burdens on you, but I'm going to make them even heavier. My father beat you with whips, but I will beat you with scorpions." 3 days later, Jeroboam and all the people returned to hear Rehoboam's decision, just as the king had ordered. But Rehoboam spoke harshly to them, for he rejected the advice of the older counselors and followed the counsel of his younger advisors. He told the people, "My father laid heavy burdens on you, but I'm going to make them even heavier. My father beat you with whips, but I will beat you with scorpions." So the king paid no attention to the people. Then this turn of events was the will of God, for it fulfilled the Lord's message to Jeroboam, son of Nebat, through the prophet Ahijah from Shiloh. When all Israel realized that the king had refused to listen to them, they responded, Down with the dynasty of David. We have no interest in the son of Jesse. Back to your homes, O Israel. Look out for your own house, O David." So all the people of Israel returned home, but Rehoboam continued to rule over the Israelites who lived in the towns of Judah. King Rehoboam sent Adoniram, who was in charge of forced labor, to restore order, but the people of Israel stoned him to death. When this news reached King Rehoboam, he quickly jumped into his chariot and fled to Jerusalem, and to this day the northern tribes of Israel had refused to be ruled by a descendant of David. 1 Kings chapter 12 verse 21. Shemaiah's prophecy. When Rehoboam arrived at Jerusalem, he mobilized the men of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin, 180,000 selected troops, to fight against the men of Israel and to restore the kingdom to himself. But God said to Shemaiah, the man of God, "Say to Rehoboam, son of Solomon, king of Judah, and to all the people of Judah and Benjamin, and to the rest of the people, this is what the Lord says: Do not fight against your relatives, the Israelites. Go back home, for what has happened is my doing." So they obeyed the message of the Lord and went home, as the Lord had continued. 2 Chronicles chapter 11 verse 1. When Rehoboam arrived at Jerusalem, he mobilized the men of Judah and Benjamin, 180,000 troops, selected troops, to fight against Israel and to restore the kingdom to himself. But the Lord said to Shemaiah, the man of God, "Say to Rehoboam, son of Solomon, king of Judah, and to all the Israelites in Judah and Benjamin, this is what the Lord says: Do not fight against your relatives. Go back home, for what has happened is my doing." So they obeyed the message of the Lord and did not fight against Jeroboam. Jeroboam makes gold calves. Jeroboam then built up the city of Shechem in the hill country of Ephraim, and it became his capital. Later he went and built up the town of Peniel. Jeroboam thought to himself, "Unless I am careful, the kingdom will return to the dynasty of David. When these people go to Jerusalem to offer sacrifices at the temple of the Lord, they will again give their allegiance to King Rehoboam of Judah. They will kill me and make me their king instead." So on the advice of his counselors, the king made 2 gold calves. He said to the people, "It is too much trouble for you to worship in Jerusalem. Look, Israel, these are the gods who brought you out of Egypt." He placed these gold idols in Bethel and in Dan, at either end of his kingdom. But this became a great sin for the people worship the idols, traveling as far north as Dan to worship the one there. Jeroboam also erected buildings at the pagan shrines and ordered priests from the common people. Those who were not from the priestly tribe of Levi. And Jeroboam instituted a religious festival in Bethel, held on the 15th day of the 8th month, in imitation of the annual festa of shelters in Judah. There at Bethel he himself offered sacrifices to the calves he had made, and he appointed priests for the pagan shrines he had made. So on the 15th day of the 8th month, a day that he himself had designated, Jeroboam offered sacrifices on the altar at Bethel. He instituted a religious festival for Israel, and he went up to the altar to burn incense. Rehoboam fortifies Judah. 2 Chronicles chapter 11 verse 5. Rehoboam remained in Jerusalem and fortified various towns for the defense of Judah. He built Bethlehem, Atam, Tekoa, Bethzer, Zoko, Adullam, Gath, Mirashah, Ziph, Adoram, Lachish, Azekah, Zorah, Aijalon, and Hebron. These became the fortified towns of Judah and Benjamin. Rehoboam strengthened their defenses and stationed commanders in them, and he stored supplies of food, olive oil, and wine. He also put shields and spears in these towns as a further safety measure. So only Judah and Benjamin remained under his control. But as the priests and Levites living among the northern tribes of Israel sided with Rehoboam, the Levites even abandoned their pasture lands and moved to Judah and Jerusalem because Jeroboam and his sons would not allow them to serve the Lord as priests. Jeroboam appointed his own priests to serve the pagan shrines where they worshipped the goats and calf idols he had made. From all the tribes of Israel there, those who sincerely wanted to worship the Lord, the God of Israel, followed the Levites to Jerusalem where they could offer sacrifices to the Lord, the God of their ancestors. They strengthened the kingdom of Judah. For 3 years they supported Rehoboam, son of Solomon. For during those years they faithfully followed the footsteps of David and Solomon. And so that's the end for today. Holy smokes. There's like so much things that happened in the story. First of all, okay, I understand that like it's Judah, the tribe of Judah and Benjamin, and basically all the Levites. There are one group, and then the other tribes and the rest of the tribes are another, basically another kingdom. The part that confuses me about this whole thing, is that if you're gonna be split up, why is it you guys can't worship the same God? Or like and that's the thing. It's like, okay, I understand like maybe God has anointed a place of worship to be. Maybe God has appointed a place where he wants to be worshipped. But it's like, for me, it's like, at least from what I've read, it's like Jeroboam did not ask God. It's like if he did not have God in his heart, which means that when he didn't have God in his heart, he has a people in his heart. So he wants to please the people, and the people are being misled away from God. And so because he wants to please people, he thinks that maybe making these 2 gold calves is the way to go about it. It's like, why not just ask like a priest or ask God to help you? It's like, if there's like another place where they can worship God, so that there's not only one place that only the people of Judah and Benjamin and the Levites could worship at, but instead Jeroboam decides to take the road. Is like decides to take the road of the people, which is, let's go worship a golden calf. And the thing is, like, for me, it's like, can't people just worship God in their private? Can't they keep up the different laws that were given to them? Can they still follow those laws privately? Why is that they have to all of a sudden turn away from God completely just because the kingdom is being split? And the fact that God says, it's like how it's supposed to be like this, how he said like the kingdoms are supposed to be split apart. The country is supposed to be split apart, but it's like just because something is being split apart does not mean that you just run away from God. It's like you still want to try to do your best to worship God and stuff, but and it's really ironic and kind of stupid thing for Jeroboam to say this. It says, he says, it is too much for you to worship in Jerusalem. Look, Israel, these are the gods who brought you out of Egypt, the two gold calves. You remember what happened with those two gold calves? They were destroyed, and the people back then had to literally the the gold that was melted, the melted gold. And I don't know, it's like that gold calf is like can be like symbolic to a lot of things, to a lot of sinful things in our lives. And yeah, it's like as we try to like ask God to help us to overcome our addiction, overcome like I don't know, it could be anything. It's like sexual sins, stealing, vaping, smoking, what else? Being addicted to alcohol and stuff like that. It's like, I feel like it's like those are things that the golden calf could be like a symbolic to, and it's like the thing is like when we don't feel God, when we don't experience God's presence, I feel like some of us runs back to the old habits that we have. And so, for example, like the people of Israel, it's like because God split the kingdoms in half, they can't. I guess they can't, or they didn't feel the presence of God. And so, because they can't feel the presence of God, they decide to go back to the old habits of sinning, which is to worship golden calves. And I felt like for us, it's like just because we don't experience God does not mean that we can go back to doing sexual sins or like alcohol, being addicted to alcohol, drugs, it's like lying and murdering people, it's like, and etc. It's like committing hate, anger in our hearts. But yeah, it's like my point is like just because you can experience God right now does not mean that does not mean that, oh, let's go back to our old self, let's go back to our sinning ways by committing these things or being around those people who do these sinful things so that we are tempted into doing these negative things and stuff. And so yeah, it's like it was just interesting. It's like, why would you go back to something that was destroying you? You are able to experience the deliverance of God delivering you from your sinful nature. But the moment that God's not with you, you say, oh God, I can't experience you, so let me go back. When you have experienced or at least heard of stories of people being delivered from their sins. Because I realized like maybe those people back then did not actually experience the deliverance of God, because the whole story of the Exodus, the book of Exodus happened a long time ago, like way before they were alive. But still, I thought like through storytelling that you at least learn from history, but I guess some of us just don't ever learn. But that's kind of like Jeroboam's side of the story that I want to kind of say a few things about. And now let's come to Rehoboam with his advice. So what's interesting about this is that Rehoboam, since he became the king of Israel before it got divided, like he is a descendant of David and Solomon. But since Solomon doesn't obey God still kept his promise of keeping a line of kings that's descended from him. And so because Solomon has rebelled against God, God cannot keep the kingdoms together, so he has to split up the tribes. So it's like it's Judah and Benjamin and Levites versus all the other tribes. And what's interesting about this is how Rehoboam, he first went to the elders to ask advice about what he should do with the people that his father basically abused them with. And the thing about this is like, yes, it's great to hear like that he's going first looking to for the elders for advice. But the thing is like, why would you ask for people? Why would you ask the advisors of people who literally led your father astray, who literally supported your father into living a life away from God, if that makes sense? it's like I understand we want to respect elders, but like at the same time, you shouldn't be respecting elders that's pulling you away from God. You should not be listening to elders, pastors, anybody who claims to be spiritual, but yet they don't give you advice that's gonna draw you closer to God. They're gonna give you advice that's just tear you further away from God. That's just kind of my like something that I just like realized like as I was reading this and stuff. And the other flaw within what the elders were talking about is like um like by lining up the harsh labors demanded by heavy taxes so that your father imposed on us, then we will be loyal to we will be your loyal subjects. But within that, there's a flaw within that, because like if you still decide to do something like I don't know, I'm trying to think, it's like if you decide to do the will of people, right? Maybe first it may be good that you lessen up the burden, the labor could be less demanding. But like if you do that, then people think, okay, this king may care about us. Let us give you an. They may come up with you another request. Then you follow that request. Then they could start to control and manipulate the king by saying like, okay, we will only stay loyal to you if you do everything that we ask you to do. If you step out of line, then no, we can't. Then we'll turn against you. And so I think that's like a flaw within itself, I guess. But yeah, and now kind of switching to the advisors who happens to grow up with Rehoboam, how they are a flaw as well. It's like not only did they give the bad advice of making the lives of Israelites more miserable, but it's just like the whole idea is like I felt like there's something I could personally relate to. It's like the whole idea is like pure pressure. It's like these people the younger men who are giving advice to Rehoboam, and how in the Bible it talks about how like the opinions of the young men who grew up with him. It is like the whole idea is like the pure pressure. It's like sometimes I can be so attracted to what other people around me who happens to be around my same age thinks about me, whereas like I will listen to their advice even if their advice are terrible. It's like I will listen to them because I want to be on the good side. I want them to think positively of me. And so yeah, within that, it's like I feel like the pure pressure is real in the story and stuff. It's like yeah. So it's like for me, it's like at this point, I still think it's important to ask for elders who have lived a longer life for advices. But at the same time, it's like our number one goal when it comes to advice is looking for people who are not only claims to be spiritual, but they live a life that is godly. They're living a life that shows that they want to pursue a relationship with God. And so maybe that could be like an elder, but then that could also be be a person in your age. And so if you want to ask God to bring people into your life who's going to give you life advices over what society expects you to do, which is like listen to elders who may lead you away from God. Or listen to your peers. Through peer pressure, you can make just as many mistakes, if not more, and more dramatic mistakes and stuff. So yeah, and then so Ecclesiastes, the kind of the bottom line of what this author is saying is fear God and obey his commands, for this is everyone's duty. God will judge us for everything we do, including every secret thing, whether good or bad. It's like I may not understand everything this author is trying to say, but it's like having that like firm foundation, having that big summary of saying at the end of the day what he's trying to say, even if he claims a lot of things to be meaningless, right? At the end of the day, what he's really trying to get us to listen to is to fear God and obey his commands. And not only that, but he says it's like the job for everyone. He's not just saying, oh, it's my job to do this. He's not only saying like that. Let's say that he's not only saying it's my job to do this, or it's their job to do this. I think he's trying to say it's people in general. It's like all humans. Our duty is to follow God, is to fear God, and to obey the commands that God has given us. And it's like fearing God does not mean to like me being afraid of snakes, me being fearful of my enemies, but it's like keeping God in my heart, in my mind at all times, in everything that I do. Keep in awe of Him, showing Him with respect, dignity. It's like those things. Like that's what fearing God is like. It's not living in fear of how we view fear as, if that makes sense. But yeah, that was like a lot of things that just kind of really stood out to me and stuff. So I hope you guys were able to take something out of today's reading. I definitely did, but yeah, may you guys go and walk with God.